Hi, I'm David Betts, business coach covering Essex and Suffolk, and this is a follow-up video to the one I did last week on planning, and an interesting question came back from feedback, and it's all very well, we worked on the vision and we know where the business wants to go, and we know where we are today and what we need to do to create a nice 90-day plan. But what about this other bit, this big bit in the middle? And that's an interesting question which I have to admit I hadn't covered before, so I thought let's go into that in more detail, because there's lots of psychological and mathematical reasons as to why that's more complicated to estimate appropriately. So this was the sheet that we used originally, and how we aligned the planning for the current plan, the 90-day plan, to the vision. So what I want to look at now is actually to try and explain, without going into maths, why we need to be careful about planning how much we can do now as opposed to how much we can do in 10 years' time. So what I want to do is to start off with actually what's the impact of your plan when you actually do the physical work. And if we have a look at this top sheet here, we've got time and growth, and today being taken as being this point in the bottom here. So as part of our planning process, we define what we're going to do week by week. And to make it simple, I'm thinking here that we do a task in a week and we implement it in the business. And what happens is, at the end of that week, we achieve a very, very small step change in the business. But actually, for most tasks that we do, not only is it a step change, but as our team gets used to working with it, we will get ongoing growth going forward. So what happens is that we actually get an incline benefit as we go forward. And I've created a simple template which would illustrate that. So if we did one change, then what we'd actually get is we would get a line going forward like that. So we did one change in the business and we would get gradually increasing as we optimize that change. But of course we don't do one change, we do lots of little changes. So let's compound that as we go forward. So if we actually then go into week 2, we get another uplift there and we go forward. Week 3, another uplift based on that one there, and we move forward. So each one we're actually increasing the incline because we're taking as the benchmark the incline that we're starting from, not the baseline each time. So these start to join together. And up the slope goes. Well, I can probably do these ones freehand as we go forward based on the template I used earlier. So what we're actually getting is each change that we make builds on the previous one. And if we look at it this way and we draw a line through that, what we can actually see is we're not getting a straight line. What we're getting is exponential growth because we are compounding all separate activities together. So just by doing your planning in your business, this is why business planning is so powerful, because each incremental change builds on the benefit of the last incremental change. Albeit unrelated, if they're all strategies to achieve growth in the business, this is doing it for you. So this is the first thing I want to point out as to why these things give you that growth. But then we've got other things. So if you put your money in the bank, they would tell you that you get the benefit of compound interest over the years. Now, in business, we do a lot better than the bank rates. We should do a lot better than the bank rates. So I've created an illustration here where we've got a turnover on this axis here, and we've got years in this axis here. So turnover is in millions. So today we're illustrating a business here which is turning over 1 million, and the calculations reflect a 20% year-on-year growth. And what I've tried to do here is to show you my plots which are being put on by eye, but the calculations are there. And what we do is each year we actually 20% increase moving forward on the previous year, and you can see there is a slope, not as enhanced as here, but there is an enhancement by building on the previous result. So it is exponential. So what we're looking at here is actually we achieved 6.119 million after 10 years from a 1 million starting point. So it's not a bad growth rate, but actually we can see that we achieved £1 million in the last year, and in the first year we just achieved a few 100,000 growth. So, or it would be 200,000 growth to be honest if it's 20% growth. So we can see that there is a line of gradual growth. So both of these things you need to bear in mind when you're trying to work out what you're going to achieve year on year going forward. Let's go how most people tend to approach this. And let's assume that we were trying to achieve with our £1 million business, what we were trying to achieve was a £10 million growth in 10 years. So if I look in here, that's going to come to about there. So if we draw a line in there, that would be where we are now to 10 million. Now, lots of people will try and do that. That's not come out tremendously well. Let's try and make it a bit darker. And this will be their approach to planning. But what will happen? The reality is if you look at both of these graphs, they start off very shallow and then they get steeper. So what tends to happen when you apply this strategy is that you start off, and what actually happens is you undershoot. And you might stick with it a bit longer, but then you start to think, oh, this isn't working. And the usual conclusion people, oh, planning doesn't work for me, so we don't bother doing it. It's not planning doesn't work, it's the fact that you've assumed that you can achieve £1 million growth in a £1 million business in year one. But you're only assuming that you're going to achieve £1 million growth in year 10 as well. So what this actually means is that you will achieve far more growth in year 10 than you will in year 1. That's the reality. The difficult bit is how you equate that from what you apply now to what you apply in year 10. So how do we take a lead here? Let's take a couple of things. We can see both of these represent exponential growth. And we know from experience that if we're going to change a business, we have to do a lot of background work first. So there's quite likely could be minimal growth in year one if we're doing lots of different structure changes to achieve long-term growth. Once we've got all those in place, then we can achieve the steeper growth that we're looking for. So let's paint a different picture. If I was to throw a line through here as an indication, it would probably be something like this. We would undershoot to start, and then we'd get our act together and we'd start to achieve more growth, and we'd do something like that. That would probably be my estimate of years of experience of working with people of what they could achieve in their business. What we'd like to think is perhaps we won't be quite such a shallow start, because very often we can make some quick changes to get us moving. But this is the kind of process we need to go through. So when you're planning, you say, right, okay, what's our long-term goal? And if we said, like we've done here, £10 million, so tenfold growth in 10 years. Let's talk about it that way. That should be quite achievable. But what you've got to look at is actually, with the way that I've drawn this, we've probably achieved tenfold growth in 8 years. Happy days. You could either back this whole lot off, or you could just rely on the fact, well look, this is roughly where we're aiming for. But if you start with saying a straight line growth is going to be totally unrealistic at either end, you're going to be quite capable of achieving way more in the latter years, but you're going to not achieve the first few years. This is the risk area, because if you fail to achieve what you've planned in the first few years, you will undoubtedly have a tendency to give up. So be very cautious as to how you approach the first few years. If you looked at a percentage growth for the first few years, that wouldn't be bad, because it's always good to be able to slightly beat your estimate. But then as you get things together and your team starts to get used to change, what you'll find is that you can then compound that. So from there, if you work something like this as a starting point, it draws on your expertise as your business owner, your expert in what you're doing, as to how fast you think you could grow it. But the real tip here is whatever you think you could do in year 10, you'll achieve more if you put your mind to it. And whatever you suddenly think, oh, if we do this, we're going to achieve that, you must allow time lag for you to get the systems and the process established first to get it all moving. So this would be hopefully a simplified version of how you do the mid-term to long-term planning in your business, and really comes back to, if you're going to be turning over 10 million in 10 years time, or whatever your business is going to be, how you back that off year by year to give you the yearly plan. And don't forget, you can always change it every time you review your annual plan. So it's nothing in planning is fixed in stone. It's all available to you, update. So I hope that's helped you. I hope that's beneficial. Look forward to seeing feedback. Follow me on the social media channels, and particularly YouTube and LinkedIn, to get the latest tips that I'm issuing. I'm David Betts, business coach working in Essex and Suffolk, and looking forward to catching up with you sometime soon.